Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends, Romans, countrymen, this build is top tier. This is 100% going to be the new meta, probably alongside Lady Death with Intimidate. But this build, apart from my Hazard Immune Lady Death Intimidate build, will be the only two builds that I use in PvP. So I will explain why this build is so good, the pieces that you need to put it together, and then in the usual format I will demonstrate it in a conflict game. So it all started when I've seen a few people running spotter with InSync. So this idea, I didn't come up with this idea or anything, although my version of this build is definitely better, I will say that now, than anything I've seen. But yeah, I noticed a few people using spotter and InSync, and I used to use spotter quite a lot on my old skill builds because it gives you weapon damage and skill damage, and it's multiplicative, so it's one of the few multiplicative talents in the game, which is better than, of course, the additive damage because it calculates it after all the buffs have been applied, not at the base damage level. I did a bit of YouTube research. I looked at some of the content creators, just some of the builds, and there isn't really too much of this going around at all at the moment. But from what I did find and from what I've seen personally, everybody runs this as low armor, and that's not the right way to do it. This build, if you play it correctly with high armor, you still have so much raw weapon damage that you'll be hitting. Well, the last 3 or 4 games I've played with this, I've been well over 30 million damage. You'll hit massive damage numbers, you'll really contribute to your team. But by playing my version of the build, which is the high armor version, essentially enabling you to stay alive for longer, and therefore getting more kills, this is the way to play it. So let's go into detail as to what the build entails. The first things first, you definitely want InSync. This is InSync and Spotter are the two most important parts of this build, and Technician. So they're the 3 things that you really need to have. So InSync is a new talent that released in TU10. Hitting an enemy grants 15% skill damage for 5 seconds. So when you shoot them, you get that 15%. Using a skill, and remember those first 3 words, using a skill or damaging an enemy with a skill grants 15% weapon damage for 5 seconds. Damage increases are doubled while both buffs are active at the same time. Now, I have no doubt in my mind that they are going to nerf this, as I'm sure you've already figured out just from looking at this screen. Bringing out your shield counts as using a skill, which gives you 15% weapon damage. You then shoot the enemy with 1 bullet from your weapon, that procs the skill damage, and because they're both active at the same time, all of a sudden you have 30% weapon damage on whatever weapon you choose. Now, Optimist was always viewed as the best damage talent because it caps out at 30% when you hit towards the end of your mag. This is 30% from the first bullet. 30% just for doing nothing but bringing out a shield. The other way that I utilise this is I do run a striker drone. This has received 2 big buffs since TU8 and actually hits quite hard in PvP at the moment. It's more than anything, it's an annoyance. It can take the enemy's attention off of you, and actually this kind of messes with your aim assist. If you ever come up against a guy with a striker turret directly above his head and you go to zoom in, for some reason the aim assist on skills is bigger than on players. Like, you'll know this if you ever shoot out the shock traps in the Kajika mission. You snap onto it, so if somebody tries to aim at you, they can instead be pulled onto your drone, which just throws off their aim. But more importantly, this is a way to initially proc InSync and to keep it active because of the constant bullet damage. But even if you don't have this and you decide to run another skill, really any works here. Stinger Hive, it doesn't really make a difference. Just use your shield. All you've got to do is redeploy it every 5 seconds and wham bam, thank you ma'am. 30% weapon damage. The other way that we are getting all of our damage is from Spotter. So because it says amplifiers, we know this is multiplicative, which is better. Amplifies total weapon and skill damage by 15% to pulsed enemies. So it actually helps out your striker drone with this build as well when you pulse an enemy. The way that we're pulsing enemy is via a unique underbarrel attachment that only works on the long underbarrel rail. If you look on the right side there with all of my 4 mods, the grip, the 3rd one down, is the linked laser pointer. This comes as part of Technician, so you need to be running Technician. Technician laser pointer that pulses targets at which it's aimed, underbarrel attachment for long rails. So this pulse is ridiculous, and I'm not even saying it lasts that long that you can pulse somebody whilst you're shooting them, kill them, they will respawn and they'll still be pulsed. You literally see them in their spawn, like, you know, the opposite end of the map. It's crazy, crazy good. And the advantage of running Technician is we get the extra skill tier +1, so that buffs both of our skills by 1. It buffs our shield from 4 to 5. The reason it's at 4 is because shields are buffed from, if you look on the right side there, it says shield skill tier. That's a really difficult sentence. Increases with both blue and yellow core attributes. So this has gone up to tier 5, which means this shield is tanky as hell, and my drone has gone up to tier 1, which gives it 20% more damage. But of course it's being buffed by spotter as well. We're also using Vigilance, or in this case Perfect Vigilance. Now you've got a choice here. You could choose to run a different damage talent, like Companion would probably be my very close second, but then instead of running the Striker drone you'd want to consider running the Defender drone, because that can still proc in sync and it has a relatively short cooldown. But in my opinion that's less damage. So I decided to go with Vigilance, and the reason for that is, one, people are using tardigrade a lot at the moment, and with Vigilance, if you read the description, increases total weapon damage by 25%, but taking damage disables this buff for 3 seconds. That's not entirely true. If your shield takes damage, but you do not, you retain Vigilance. If your blue bonus armour takes damage, but your own personal armour does not, then you retain Vigilance. So Vigilance is stronger than, just the moment you take even one bit of damage. That's actually not true. If you've got blue over shields from someone using Vanguard, you've got your shield out and they're not hit your head or your body, they just hit your shield, you'll keep it up, and that's 25% extra additive damage. What weapon you use is entirely your choice. My weapon of choice is the Phalate SA58, because as you all know, this alongside the Carbine are my favourite ARs, and this thing hits hard. Plus, I mean, look at that roll. Look at that beautiful roll. The only real requisite is that prerequisite is it needs to have the long underbarrel rail. So if you're going to run this with SMGs, that's a really good choice. Do not run it with the Tactical Vector, the 9mm version, because that's a short. You need to run it with the 45 ACP, as that's a long underbarrel rail. So just pay attention to that. CQB can have it, so that's a nice choice as well. The M1A, as that thing hits really hard at the moment. And then you could even run Fox's Prayer. So that's the weapon, and that's how the damage is coming together. We're getting the spotter and the vigilance, giving us huge amounts of damage. In sync is just flat 30% damage buff just for using a shield, and technician allows us to pulse enemies constantly. The gear pieces that I've chosen, this is where I'm really happy with this build. Every piece here is really well rolled. I run 4 blues, and honestly, if I could, I would run 6 blues. Yes, you heard that right. I would run this build as 6 blues, and I guarantee it will still slap. I'm pulling massive damage numbers every game on a very tanky build just because of how this is all set up. So I've decided to go for 2 Walker and Harris with this build because we get the damage to armour as well as the weapon damage. Every single piece I have rolled to critical hit chance and critical hit damage with critical hit damage mods. It's all I have across the board. I've also got 2-piece Providence because they give me 15% headshot damage, which is really good if your opposition uses a shield. If you're a good aim, just shoot him in the face. It's 15% more damage, and we get the extra 10% critical hit chance. I'm running 1-piece Fenris, again with critical hit chance and damage, just for the AR, the assault rifle damage. But if you're going to use a rifle, just use the Fox's Prayer instead. If you're going to use an SMG, use the Sokolov. You see where we're going with this. And finally, we're running 1-piece Grupo for the extra critical hit damage. I could potentially swap off 1 Walker and Harris for the third Providence to get even more critical hit damage, but damage to armor is really good. It's applied at the base level, and all of your critical hit chance and damage are on top of that. So I quite like the idea of having the 2 Walker and Harris. Plus, they're just better rolls. As you can see, every piece is rolled into critical hit chance and critical hit damage. If you can't get perfect vigilance, don't worry. The only difference is the non-perfect version is a 4-second disable buff instead of 3 seconds. It's not the end of the world. Secondary weapon, entirely your choice. There's a mechanic in the game in which if you pull out your shield whilst your main weapon has 10% bullets or less, 10% ammo remaining in the mag, it automatically pulls out your second weapon. So whatever it is, make sure it has in sync as well. The M870 hits super hard. So I like this, but I very seldom use this. All I've got to do is sit in the back, pop my shield to get the buff, start shooting an enemy, have the drone out, and murderize basically. So yeah, I'm really happy with this build. Like I say, I've seen some similar versions, people using the combination of InSync and Spotter, but I truly believe that the high armor variant of this build is better because the longer you are alive, the more damage you ultimately do. And that's a big mistake that people make. High armor targets, high armor players, you usually get very high damage numbers because they're just in the fight for longer. They're not having to dip into cover every couple of seconds to heal. They last longer and therefore can just keep shooting. And because this build has so much raw damage, that conjunction of the high survivability with a beastie shield and obviously that weapon damage just means that you're going to be outputting some pretty massive numbers. I'm hoping to demonstrate that to you all now. I'll quickly go through some of the extra benefits of Technician. I'll be honest, there are hardly any. The main and only reason that I use it is this chunky boy here. Technician laser pointer that pulses targets at which it's aimed. So you need to have rifles unlocked, and of course I've got AR unlocked here because I'm using that. Annoyingly, this doesn't work in PvP. It'd be overpowered if it did. That's a shame. We've got the skill damage to help out our drone. Gain 15% bonus ammo aiming skill. We're not going to be using that. 1+ skill tier is also really strong, and actually this is really good as well. 6% damage to drone skill, proxies and robotics. It's very, very useful for breaking down enemy stuff. That does work on their shields as well, by the way, which is quite useful. And then the EMP grenade, that's really effective at EMPing. It has quite a long duration. That is buffed by your status effect stat. So the one real weakness of this build, and the reason that it's only going to be 50% of my total builds used, is hazard protection. We have none, so I'm going to run this alongside my hazard immune SMG build. I will link that in the description, by the way, because that build is phenomenal and top tier meta. It's, you know, we're in a hazard meta at the moment, and this build doesn't perform well, so that may seem a bit strange that I'm saying this is a meta build, but this is a top 3 build in the game. Honestly, if you play this right, this build, I'm truly confident in saying that this is a top tier build. You just got to be very wary of riot foamers, and if that's the case, there is no one build in the game that outperforms in every area. You know, if you see 4 times riot foam on the opposite team, you need to be running hazard protection. If not, you're doing yourself a disservice. You know, if you see no riot foam, I would run this build because of the raw damage, or I might even run a pure crit chance Lady Death build. Crit damage and crit chance. So yeah, obviously every build has its weaknesses, and this build is no different to that, but in the right scenario, well, you're about to see. You're about to see. And the added bonus is, because you're pulsing everyone all the time, you're only helping out your team anyway. If you have multiple people running spotter, that's perfect, because they'll already know where they are because they've been pulsed, and because they've already been pulsed, your teammates are already getting that 15% multiplicative damage before they've even popped in sync. I never thought I'd see the day where what was designed to be a skill damage talent became top tier for weapon damage, but InSync it is the best damage talent in the game. I wouldn't recommend using Harmony with this, by the way. Harmony has a relatively similar RPM to the M1A CQB, which is the best rifle for PvP, by the way. It's the single best one you can use, apart from maybe a Diamondback build. But it hits for about 150k less on a sort of like high armor build. It's really weak. The other thing I like about having a striker drone is that, see that right bumper there? Oh, that damage! That damage! So at the moment I don't have instinct there, it is prop now because I'm doing damage from my skill. I'm not even popped my shield yet. Keep pulsing this guy already, but I don't quite know where he is. There he is, he's been pulsed. Yoink. Shield. Oh my days, look at that damage. This guy was dodge rolling, so he did not contribute to that. And see, this guy's still pulsed in the previous fight. Look at the damage! Look at the damage! It's so strong. Pop shield. Go for the head. Valiant effort, good sir, but you are not going to defeat me in my awesome build. I apologise if I'm getting excited. It's rare that I find a good build, because I got beat by this build a couple of games ago. Well, not a couple of games ago, it was like some game yesterday, and I was like, oh, that's pretty good. Did a bit of research, and I think I found like one content creator that had done something kind of similar. And I was like, okay, yeah, I see where they're going with this. InSync like is good for weapon damage, and I've always liked Spotter. I've used it in previous builds you can actually find on my channel. So I was like, okay, it's time to give it the What's It Fox game in Magic. Time to give it the overhaul. Oh my god. Only person shooting that guy there. No instinct proc, by the way. Oh, this is bullying now.
Boost about to activate.
Look at that damage.
Boost
That's a good little spot. I think you can sit there. Oh, let's go get that boost. Yeah, so that's the best part. Even if you don't actually have... Wait, they're still spawning there? Never. Even if you don't have in sync procced, it still slaps. Like, Spotter is such a good talent. And, you know, I mean, admittedly I'm using a very strong AR. Mine is very well rolled, and my build is well rolled. It's got critical hit chance and damage in every piece. So just bear that in mind. I do have a very optimised build, and if you put this together, it may feel a little bit weaker compared to my version. But I'm seriously considering, and I will certainly be testing, a 6 armour version of this build. I really don't feel I need any of those weapon damage buffs. Yes, it'll take longer to melt people down. Hello, buddy. See that? I didn't see him until the little right bumper symbol appeared there, and that's why. Oh, the instant melt!
Serious trauma.
No! Oh, where was I getting shot? Ah, guy to the left. I thought that was a drone that was shooting me from the left. Ah, that's a shame. Buddy, behind you! Blind set behind! Yeah, so this is the good part of the build, you know, apart from the obvious, the survivability in conjunction with the severe weapon damage, is the ability to give you and your teammates a lot of extra information via pulsing with your gun and your striker drone instantly, like that. See that there? That right bumper? I didn't even see that guy. All I saw was the right bumper. Oh no, that's time for me to leave. That's too many people. That melt. That melt. Oh, this guy might be helping me actually. Where are they going to be spawning, I wonder? Back this way? Such a good scope, the C79. Because the FAL that I use is so stable. Are they spawning here? I lose my drone. They are not spawning here. Okay, that's merciful anyway, so yeah, they've lost that game. But yeah, please let me know your thoughts. And like I said, I've seen a few people playing this build, so if you are one of those people, let me know your version. I want to know if you feel that it performs, your version performs better than my version. I really think this is an armour build, you know, like the old versatile meta that relied on having high armour and then just swap into a shotgun or SMG and melting. I feel like this is kind of in the same vein. It's using two very unique talents to have great synergy on a high armor build, you know. And you saw the melt there. You don't need to have loads of reds on your build. I would honestly spec this 4 to 6 blues. You're pulsing your team. You're providing all that feedback and just melting them down. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, boys and girls. I really am curious to know of some variants to this build. I've started to see it creep in, so I want to know if this is going to become a new meta. I think it definitely has its place in the meta, and I think that score will will confirm that. I can't remember the last game that I hit less than 30 million damage with this build, and that's 4 blues. So, you know, not an Intimidate in sight, no Riot Foam in sight. It's different, but it's good. So thank you very much if you did watch this through to the end. I appreciate all of the continued feedback and support of the channel. You know, you guys give me a lot of ideas for builds. You're telling me whether you like or dislike my content. I really like that. Be as vocal as you can be. It really helps me out. Yeah, so let me know what your thoughts. I will have a new video up for you within the next couple of days. So I'll see you all then. Peace.